everybody. Welcome to the next installation of Let's Talk About Race. I have two amazing women with me today who I admire, who I look up to, who I seek advice from, who really in some ways kind of help shepherd me along my path, even though they might not know it fully. So I have Erin Anova all the way from New York.
Hey.
And then I have Monica Day all the way from Philly. Are we in Philly?
We're in Philly.
Okay. So what I want to talk about today is, well, first, I got to do my plug. Let me just do my plug real quick.
Yeah. Do it. Hello.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a okay, this is making me sick and dizzy. There is a show called Mulatto Math, which opens this Sunday, March 25th. It's a show I wrote that comes from my heart, and actually both these women have been very integral in helping to bring this forth in a lot of ways. So I would love for you to, if you're in the LA area or you have a car, I would love for you to come to the show. So you can go to www.mulattomath.com and get your tickets. All right, done. So today I wanted to talk with both of you about race and identity. I had a great conversation yesterday with three women who, one was mixed race, one identified, she did not identify African-American, she identified Black. Monique Ruffin was on yesterday, Erin. And then one who identified white. So I want to ask you quickly how you identify, and then I want to go deeper into the conversation. So for me, I identify as mixed race, and at times I identify as an African-American woman.
Okay. I identify as Black, as African-American, and I don't push it much, but I had a college professor that really said we should call ourselves American Africans. That's really, I like that because it's like, what kind of African are you? I'm an American one. That's my preference. I haven't been able to get steam going on that. But yeah.
Why haven't you been able to get that going?
Because I just don't talk about it enough, but I really like American African. Yeah.
Got it. I like that too. That's pretty
fun.
I
like that. I identify as white because it's accurate in terms of how we talk about race. But I also identify as European American and also sometimes Italian American because that says more about where my people come from.
Got it. Cool. Cool. And so I wanted to talk today about, let's do briefly your experiences growing up and if your world, the world you grew up in, let you intersect and be connected with people who were quote unquote different than you. So, yeah. Erin, why don't you start?
Okay. I had an interesting experience. I grew up in Oakland, California in the Black Panther heyday, like in the early 70s. And my mom was with a group of friends, started a Pan-African preschool called Usharika. So my initial education was very African-centered, very Pan-African-centered. We learned Swahili. I did not understand how that impacted me until much, much later in my life. Yeah. In terms of, I constantly had people telling me that my skin was like the African soil. I had all this, like, it was like a little bubble. Then at 7, we moved to Sacramento, California. And I was the only Black person in my class. And it was when Roots came out. So it was just rude awakening all the way around. I started school with the huge afro and a dashiki outfit. The kids had never seen hair like mine. They thought it was a wig. They were pulling at it. My brother was getting in fights because people were calling him Kunta Kinte. Like, it was just culture shock, like to the nth degree. 4 years later, I'm trying to feather my afro like Farrah Fawcett. Because kids, you just want to be like everybody else around you. So it was just an interesting combination, and just being in suburban Sacramento. My high school was exactly 25% white, 25% Black, 25% Asian, 25% Latino.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And we were unified by music. Everybody liked hip hop. That was, 80s, whatever. So it was a really well-rounded experience. And then for later on, I went to an HBCU, historically Black college, Howard University. And that kind of took me back to my early childhood Black, whatever experience. So that's my story.
I love it. I didn't know about the zero, like you growing up and doing the preschool, the Pan-African preschool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, my mother was very, very, militant, Black proud. Like I saw her books when I was younger, and just the titles of some of them. Only when I became an adult, I was like, oh my God, my mom was a little mau. But she worked for the state of California, and very buttoned up. You wouldn't know it. She seemed like Claire Huxtable, but she was very, very, Black proud and proud. She went to Africa when I was little, and that's what inspired me to go, and so on and so forth.
Oops. That's what inspired you? I'm sorry, I missed it. My internet went.
I later went to Africa because my mom went when I was like 20 or so. When everybody else was taking their backpacks to Europe, I was like, I'm going to Africa because my mom had such an amazing experience. So that's what the short story is, that I had an experience that I recognize is not common, especially for dark brown women, dark brown African, is that I was totally affirmed as a dark brown child, totally affirmed. And it wasn't until I was older that I was like, oh, people don't think I'm supposed to be pretty. It really occurred to me later, which is the opposite thing that a lot of my friends got. Like the only thing I noticed it in is that I wanted to be an actress, and I knew I didn't see little girls that looked like me on TV. When I looked at the Disney show, the one Black girl always had to have long, straight, wavy hair and light skin. So I did notice that, like, but I didn't have that like internalized, there's something wrong with your skin and your hair, because I just had people pounding it in my head from like about 0 to forever.
And so from 0 to with the pounding in the head, was your community all Black in Oakland?
I did not have a single book that didn't star a Black child, or that had a white person in it. My mom used to go to Human Books in Denver, Colorado, come to Harlem. All my children's books had Black people in it. I didn't have a white doll. I didn't have anything that didn't reflect me, really. Which now I'm like, the hell? I mean, at school, I had Dick and Jane books and stuff, but at home, all Black dolls, all Black books. Just everything. My mom, when she went to Africa, she got these Senegalese and Ghanaian books that had little Black girls starring in them. So it's a very upside down experience. It was really, interesting.
I just saw I just took a look at myself in the screen, and I just saw my face like, that is very interesting. That's a miracle, actually. In a lot of ways in this country, that's amazing.
I have to give my mom big props for that. She was very conscientious about that. And my dad. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, Miss Day.
I know. I'm like all enthralled too. I love that story. And it makes me think too, like what are the ages, right? That racial awareness and sensitivities and everything like comes in, right? Like it's that, and well, anyway, I could go on and on, but let me tell you my story because I'm all intrigued now by yours. So here's the thing. I often have people say to me, because I'm white, like there's this, why do you care? Or there's this idea that as a white person, I never knew anything about race. That's kind of the running narrative at this point, right? Which couldn't be further from my experience. Where I grew up was in, East Coast, Trenton, New Jersey. I used to joke and say I didn't become white until I moved to California. And I used to joke and say, did it happen in Tennessee? Like, when did that happen? Right? Because we didn't have that. It wasn't that I didn't know I was white, but it was like, if somebody asked you what you were, we were still very close to our experience of coming here. Right. So, you were Italian, or you were Polish, or you were Irish, right? Or all of these things. That was my awareness growing up. And people even lived in their neighborhoods accordingly, and didn't like each other accordingly. There was no love lost between the Irish and the Italians, right? So I grew up, that was all very real to me. And there was this hierarchy. I often talk about the hierarchy of whiteness, which is like all but lost in conversation currently. But I grew up being very aware of that hierarchy of whiteness. And my mother liked to hang out in the lower rungs of that. So what I mean is that her first love of her life was a very light-skinned Black man. And that would have been in the years before it was legal right? Because Loving was 1969. I was born in 66. This was a little bit before me. So that was not okay and got her kicked out of her house. And then she had me with my Italian father. So Italian is only like a couple maybe a rung or two up from Black on the hierarchy. Right. So she's still not batting 1,000 as far as other white people are concerned. And then it's funny that her second husband was an Irish cop. So, and then her third one was a Jewish optometrist.
Oh, wow.
Right. Okay. So you get this is what I swim in, right?
And I'm sorry, I missed what your mom's ethnic background was.
My family on that side was, I would say, essentially Eastern European.
Okay.
My grandmother was from Yugoslavia, and I really know nothing about my grandfather's coming here. That's kind of the big mystery.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. He's probably the closest to the whatever, like longest here and all that kind of stuff, right? And the most lost to us as well. Now, so the interesting thing is, my parents didn't stay together for very long. They split up when I was 6 months old. I was sort of an oops a little bit. And interestingly enough, because they had these different paths. So I have this Italian American, extremely racist, conservative father, right? Who at 5 years old, I remember being in the car with him, and I've told this story a lot. And he would drive through neighborhoods of darker skinned people, and he would yell epithets out the window. That was my father. And I was in the back seat of the car. And this is interesting, especially as I listened to your story, Erin. Like, I'm in the back of the car, and I feel at that age, you can go either way, right? You can think that's how it is, and you can be rah-rah with your parent. But because I had this mother where her best friend was a white woman who was married to a Black man. She had a lot of other people in my life. So my instant reaction to my father's racism was always shame, always. And I was like cowering in the back of the car. And ultimately, his way of being, he has moved to South Carolina so he could fly his Confederate flag. And we have had no contact for, so race, when he would try to get me from my mother, take custody of me, it was what he would use as character was like, well, she's dating a Mexican man and he's staying at the house. Wow. And that was a reason to go to court to try to get me from my mother. Right. Oh. Right. So when people look at me and say, you're white, what do you care? I'm like, I don't know what you all are talking about, but race has been a fracturing. Race is why I didn't have a relationship with my father. It was why I went through all of these, things of trying to get me away from my mother. Right. So that is my background. And I think that when I listen to you, Erin, right? I'm sorry, am I saying, okay. When I listen to you, Erin, it's like there was something about the fact that at very young ages, I had a mix of people in my life. So it never made sense to me. It was like a cognitive dissonance from a really early age. The things that my father would say was wrong with people who looked a certain way was like people I knew in my mother's world, and it wasn't true. So I don't know how it would have been if I hadn't had those early experiences, but I never felt like I got on like the white train and went with it kind of without questioning.
That's great.
It's really interesting. Just listening to both your stories, writing the show, there's much in it that like really deals with all the skeletons I had in the closet around race and identity. And there's some really hard pieces, just really seeing people for who they are, shortcomings, limitations, what they've been exposed to, why they made the choices they made. What I'm coming to is I'm not sure all of what I saw is all of what happened. Mm-hmm. It's like my interpretations of things. And again, this piece is really like I'm unraveling this whole thing. It's my interpretation of things. Like it could just be that Monique's this type of person, as opposed to she's black and white and lives in a black and white world. Like maybe my personality is more insecure, shy, awkward. I mean, all these things. And it's really interesting pulling apart the pieces that I have assumed at certain points were race, because it came from my dad, and my dad is black. So, I mean, it's really like, as I say it now as an adult and someone who's been reflecting on life, it sounds so stupid. But yeah, it's just very interesting because I just really loved hearing both of your stories so far. So,
you know, kids make up stories when things don't make sense.
Yes.
On a separate issue from race, just as human beings trying to be healthy, you know, I know you and trying to therapy or whatever, when it is not discussed and explained and explicitly said for a child or expressed, they make up a story, and usually it's negative and it's usually their fault.
Yes.
Happen. You know, and so I was just going to say that you said earlier that you may want to talk to us about with our children.
Yes.
The one experience that I had with my daughter, I was like, I have to express, because I was so afraid she was going to make it mean something about her. And so that's all, like so maybe you were just a child that needed things to be explained to you more.
Yeah. As I reflect on being a parent of a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, I am constantly sharing. I'm probably oversharing. It's to the point where Kaleo's like, okay, Mom, I got it. Mom, I got it. But I don't have any other way at this point because I know that was something that was very important for me that I feel like I missed. And I look back at that too. I'm wondering also if, one, my parents maybe did try, or maybe, and I didn't hear it, or two, they were so in the culture shock of being a mixed couple in 1960 Facebook, 69.
And I want to say, as you know, as a parent, so I was able to have a conscious conversation with my daughter about race because that's my wheelbarrow. I can do that. I was able to talk to her about sex, but I wasn't able to talk to her about money.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So I'm saying everybody has their strengths, and maybe your parents, that just was not a place they felt comfortable to talk openly and explain. And she's probably thinking this, so let me get but maybe money wasn't, we have all these taboo subjects. So
yeah,
I love that.
Beautiful. I love it too.
And there's Monique, just to say too, I feel like sometimes there's this Monday morning quarterbacking that we're doing, right? About our childhood and how they did it. And well, on that play, I think they could have done that, But as a parent myself, I'm in it. I'm like, geez, I don't know, man. I called it the way I saw the field. Like, I don't know. I didn't see that person about to tackle me,
Totally.
So it's like, I think sometimes, and I've had to come to this with my own family configuration, I actually went back to see my father after many years, and I had this dream. It's kind of a crazy story, but I had this dream that the store, I knew where to find him because my grandmother had a dress shop and it had been there for 50 years, so I could be out of touch for a long time, but I had this sense that they were in a place, and I had this dream that I showed up and it was out of business and they were gone. And my daughter, my second daughter, was months old. I mean, she was like baby still. And I drove to Trenton, New Jersey. I mean, I lived in Philadelphia at the time, and I went, and the store was closed just for the day. But sure enough, there were big signs that said going out of business. Mm-hmm. So there was like this. So anyway, long story short, I went back the next day and I saw him. And I mean, I hadn't seen him in so long, I had to introduce myself. I was standing in front of the store and he said, "Are you waiting for the bus or are you waiting to come in and shop?" Uh-huh. And I had to introduce myself. It had been that long.
Wow.
And no one came in the shop. We sat all morning and we just talked. And at that point, I had enough of myself. I mean, I had done years and years of all things. And, we had this incredible conversation and nothing about him had changed. I mean, he still saw things the way he did. He still, like, the whole thing. And I was able to say, like, here's who I am in the world. Here's who I have come to be and what I have come to believe. Mm-hmm. And we had this beautiful moment where he said, like, I could almost, like, I just, he said, I don't believe anything you believe. He said, but I'm so proud of you for who you have become, even though you have become, you know, what he said was, I couldn't parent you anymore because I thought you were lost.
Wow.
And he thought I was lost to this way of not seeing people as other. Like, he thought the way that I am is like lost and hopeless. And, you know, how could you get by in the world if you weren't afraid of people of color, literally, right? Or if you saw things the way, you know, that I saw them. And so that was like a really important moment where I could see him. And I didn't have to continue the shame of being the daughter of, right, this person who was like this, which was a tremendous healing for me. I mean, I think everybody has something to heal from. And for me, it has been healing from the shame of the racism of what I come from. Mm-hmm. And that was a really important moment. So I just love what you're saying, right? It's like we're all in both of these places where we're raising these little people and we're trying to do something better than was done for us, or maybe repeat the good things and, you know, not the bad. And yet we're adults and we can look back at our parents and make a Monday morning quarterback kind of sense, you know, of them and maybe let them off the hook a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of this process and journey. I mean, it's a show, but like it was a process and journey. And not everybody knows the story as to why it was necessary for me to write it. But I was dealing with some health stuff and I started dialoguing with the part of my body that was really in some pain and trauma. And it said, you have to share your story. And part of me thought, oh, stop hiding yourself. But the act of actually doing the work to share the story has brought so much healing for me. I wrote, even yesterday, being on this journey of the show has allowed me it's put me in a position to have conversations I wouldn't be willing to have otherwise. Like it was the thing that was pulling me to do the work and the healing that needs to get done. So yeah, that's what I got to say about that piece right there. And I love both of you as parents. I've just really enjoyed watching you. And I think I've said outright to you, Erin, at some point, I think when you told me you were having a conversation about sex with your child when she was like a young adult. And I was just like, oh. Like I stored that. I'm like, okay. And if I can't do it, I'm coming to one of you.
Can I share another quick story?
Of course, yeah.
So I really wanted, what Monica pointed out is just the crux of it all, that word shame. And in terms of, I had a teacher once point out, like, it's embarrassing for everybody, meaning racism, the shame. It's for Black people, for white people, all in this country, the history. It's shaming and it's embarrassing for everybody. And the collective, everyone owning that is what is going to lead to the healing. Everyone acknowledging how we are participating in some shit that was set up before we were born. Yet we benefit from it. We are affected by it. So the short story I want to share about that is that the one incident I had with my daughter, she was 5 years old. We were at West Hollywood Park and she was on the swing.
Can you share what your daughter is, what she is? Like, I don't know if people know your children's part.
Oh, I'm sorry. She's 21. Yeah. What do you mean? Like
like her dad's ethnicity, what she identifies with the world as. So everybody knows this about your guys.
Her dad is mixed race. His father is Black. His mother is white. And that was very interesting in that, like, in just the years of, so I don't even want to talk about him, but that,
I just want to put that into the mix so people have background. Okay, go ahead.
And people have often thought that she's mixed race, but she identifies as Black. So anyway, we were at the at the park, and a little boy came up to her and he said, I'm not, they had a conversation. And so she came over to me and she was crying. And she said, this boy said he wouldn't play with me because I'm black and ugly. And she was like really, really upset. And the little boy was still over there playing, and he had thrown sand at her. So, you know, all my mama hunters, right? But I immediately went into the thing where you don't make it about the kid that's doing the bad thing. You focus on the kids that's been hurt. So I said to her, well, is it true? And she like looked up at me like tears streaming down her face. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, are you black and ugly? Are you? And she was like, no. And I was like, well, then, you know, then you don't have to be sad. And she was like, okay. And I said, and do those two words go together? Do black and ugly go together? Mm-hmm. So we had like a whole conversation like about that. And so she was like feeling like a little bit better. And so something else happened. And somehow the mother of this little boy was nearby. And I don't think I said anything to her. Maybe the mother overheard because she talked extra loud. And she said, why would you say that to that little girl? Why would you say that? We don't do that. And the little boy mumbled something. She snatched the little boy and they went away. She mumbled something to my daughter. But the thing that was able to bring my daughter, there were two things piece about the whole situation, is that I said, well, you know, that little boy thinks that, but his mom doesn't agree. I don't know why he said that. I don't know, you know, who knows why. But his mom took him away and is going to deal with him because she doesn't think that that's okay. And so she was like, his mom doesn't think. I was like, no, look at her. She's snapping. They're leaving. And that the fact that the mom owned that was huge for my daughter. Mm-hmm. And that, like, the person who's his authority is saying it's not okay. So he's just like a little aberrant brat. Like, I think she felt it was the family, the mom, everybody. But it gave her some peace that the mother owned some of the shame, and that the mother was so ashamed that she left the park. Like, you know what I mean? So the last thing that happened is we were just sitting on the park bench, and this whole group of men came in, all black, and they were getting ready to play basketball. And we just like sat there quietly, and they were, you know, doing whatever they were doing. And one of them like started singing some song that she knew, and they were just having camaraderie. And just out of the blue, she was like, Black people are beautiful. And I was like, yes, they are. And the fact she discovered that on her own, we just sat in the silence. I was like, because she said, I still feel sad. And I let her just sit there with her sad feelings as somebody called her black and ugly, because you get to be sad about that. But even if it isn't true, and even so, anyway, that's all I just wanted to share. That was, I felt gratitude that was the one experience that I witnessed. That was it. She had other stuff she told me about in high school as the only black girl, but
yeah. That's a great story, and how beautiful that thing came to that awareness. Sorry, I don't know if it's really loud right now. And that mom, you're right. It is about all of us owning a piece of this thing called racism.
Right.
And I think there's something. It's funny because it's like I have a mirror reflection story, right? And I think that this idea that we have as parents that somehow only what we tell them and teach them is going to count, right? Like, you know, this idea, like, why would you say that? Because we don't think that. Well, they're in the world, you know, they're watching TV, they're out with their friends, right? Funny enough, my daughter had an experience, my oldest daughter, she was in a pre-K where she was the only white child.
Oh yeah. So their father is white.
Their father is white. So they're white. She was the only white child in this, but just, it was a great Montessori program at our local school. Most of the other white families in the school, of course, sent their kids to the Catholic school, not to the local right school. That's the segregation of where I live. We sent her to this Montessori. It was a Head Start program in our neighborhood. She was absolutely head over heels in love with a little boy in that class. And he was amazing. They were adorable. Like, they were so cute. They were like little old people, you know, in a relationship. He would open doors for her. He was very chivalrous. It was the cutest thing ever. And then, and his parents both taught at that school. They were both teachers there. Okay. So I knew them, you know, you walk by their hallway, blah, blah, blah. And then one day, I don't know how this came up, but the idea came up because they were such a perfect little couple that they were going to get married one day. And he said to my daughter, oh, I can't marry you. And she said, what do you what, just what? She's 5. And he says, well, you're white. Like, I can't. And it was like no race conversation had ever, it was what it was. And she was just devastated. I mean, right. She comes home and she's just absolutely devastated, and so it's so interesting hearing you did, share, it's like the flip side. So it's everywhere. And I did have I did have a relationship with the parents, and very interesting, they were horrified and they said, that's not what we believe. But they went to a church, right? So they went to a Black Christian church. And so that was their feeling, was like, they must have picked it up there, that was not a thing, that it wasn't them. And who knows? I don't know if it really was them or not. Is that something that you say in the moment? I mean, or you think that it's not what we believe, and yet somewhere, right, it's come from. And so it was a good opportunity for all of us to kind of have this conversation with our children. But I think the point is that this idea, like you said, we have to be able to talk to them about everything and know that they're having influences that are not just us. I've had my kids say to me, Mom, my youngest said to me, everything isn't about race. She got whatever and I was like, yes, it is. And then years later, she said to me, you're right. Like, I see it now, but I was like you, Monique, like I'm always pointing it out. And so like, I want them to have eyes that see not through the color of their skin. My children have to be able to see not through white eyes, because if they only see through white eyes, they're not seeing enough. Right. And they're not seeing a whole truth.
Racism is everywhere in the world, but I feel like we have a unique brand in the United States. I just
Oh yeah.
When you mentioned that your dad was Yugoslavian, I thought about my brother, who is Black. He married a woman from Yugoslavia. And when I went to Australia, I visited her parents, and they said, when Sandra told us she was marrying a Black man, we were not surprised. We have always intermarried. My husband is Bosnian and I am Serbian. And I was like, okay. We don't speak like that in the United States. You guys are both white people, but okay.
But that's so real there. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're always intermarried.
Yes.
Well, I want to honor the time. It's 10:34, and I want to have this conversation for about half an hour. So I want to thank you so much, Monica and Aaron, for being willing to say yes and to be so vulnerable. I don't even know if you felt vulnerable sharing, but did you feel vulnerable sharing? Just yes or no? No. Great. Yeah. And, so what I mean when I say vulnerable, I heard that, and it's not that you felt vulnerable, but what you're sharing, you are such powerful people in the sense that you have done so much to really like nurture your own spirits and really honor yourselves as human beings, divine beings having a human experience, that the stories you share roll off your tongue. And I'm imagining for many people that isn't the case. So I just really want to acknowledge and appreciate both of you for being the people that you are and saying yes and being my friends. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Monica, if you come to New York, call me up. Let's get coffee.
I come to New York I was going to say, I come to New York all the time. Let's definitely do that.
And we've made another connection. That is my job. As a mixed person in this country, my job is to be the bridge.
Be the bridge.
Not that y'all needed this bridge in this case, but I'm going to take credit for that.
Just bravo, Monique. I'm so proud of you. I know all that this is taking, and I saw the run of it that you did before, and it blew me away. So I know that this next iteration is going to just be mind-blowing. I'm so proud of you. Like, it left me stunned. Like, I was like, this is what fucking has to happen. People have to say this hard shit she's saying, uncomfortable shit she's saying. This is what has to happen. So I bow down. Do your thing, girl.
Thank you, my love. Thank you.
Which makes me realize you should plug at the end. You plugged in the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Plug.
Plug.
So I would really love to have the first show and second show sold out. That means March 25th, in 2 days. I need 20 of you to buy more tickets. So I need 20 tickets sold to sell out the first show. Second show, we'll get to that. But
thank you, Deb. She said we had such good conversation.
Oh, good. Yes. And your sister just signed on saying, dang, just signed on. So I would love for everybody to go to, oh God, where's the camera? mulattomath.com and buy a ticket, and be willing to buy a ticket and invite somebody who you think of as, oh, I would feel uncomfortable if I brought them to this show. Like, invite them and let the show do the work. Let the show do the work. So thank you, Monica. Thank you, Erin. And we'll have another broadcast at some point, and maybe these ladies will join me again. But thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.